Hello, good evening, good day, everybody, and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. This is the Geopolitics edition, super chat edition, and live chat edition. So let's see who all is there on the live chat. Today, I will only take questions about geopolitics. Yesterday, we did a history live stream. I hope that was interesting. Today, it's going to be only geopolitics. Let's see who all is there on the live chat. I can see Ameya Tulpule from Alemania, from Germany. Bonsoir, sir. Shri Ramchandra Ramaha, Vansh Gada, Ayush Singh, uh, Amisha Mishra, Anonymous Scientist, bonjour. Mystic SK, Jai Shri Krishna, Suhas Reddy, Ayush Yadav, Sandeep Naik, Rahul Sharma, Astro Dude, Mr. Saxena from Ireland, McLevin, Aryavart Khash, Suhas Reddy, Vladimir Putin, Hensi Penguin, Jayant, Anupam Jaiswal, City Slicker, Just Some Nut, Shashank Kaushik, Negro, Shiva Sai, Mystic SK, Komal, Dark Knight, Geopolitical Dubey, good evening. Who else do we have? Nishant Chaudhary, Daksh Vora from Gujarat, Aryan Sharma, Vanshi Kalem, General Subuthai, Somi Jain from Jaipur, Dhruv Durya, Ramesh Kunti Gorla, Adway, Dev, Sandeep Naik, Rajkumar Arya, Shanks, Jayant, Vinay Rai from London, Rahul Fulera, Satyam Gupta, Geopolitical Dubai again from Indore, Somi Jain, Pratham Sharma, Ashu Gautam, Animals for Laugh, Prashant Singh, Dipesh Sharma, Avinash, and Rocky Bhai, Negro, Pragya, Sunil Sehgal, Satellite, Beneath from Siliguri, Halwa, Hola, Vinay Rai from London, Freedom from Outcome from Canada, Vikash PJ, Kartikeya Singh Rajput, uh, Adway Rajat Panwar, Rocky Bhai, Shivani Maheshwari, Shanks, Sai Teja Reddy, Shivasai Dev, Hayes, Ankita, Om Prakash, Deepankar Roy, Ajinkya 2004, Sangeet Srinivas, Vikash PJ, and everybody else. Good evening, good day to all of you, wherever you are in the world, and thank you so much for joining this live stream. And now let us get going with the questions. Ravi Kumar is from Andhra Pradesh as well. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being on the live chat. Let's take some questions. All right. Okay. Once again, let me remind you all, I'm going to only take questions from geopolitics today. So please don't give other questions. Otherwise, it's going to be a waste. All right. So ICMBs says, are tariff hurdles the double-edged sword that India needs? Short-term pain that forges long-term global resilience. Well, it certainly is a wake-up call for India. And it's an opportunity for India to execute great reforms in the country, because the country does need that for sure. See, what the tariffs do is that they are going to hamper India's exports to the US. What are tariffs? Let's say you are an exporter, I am an American importer, and I want to buy something from you. Let's say you are an Indian exporter. Let's say you are, and I'm an American importer, and I have given you a contract for $100 million worth of, let's say, watches. Completely hypothetical example. Don't take it literally, but you get the point. So you are going to manufacture $1 million worth of watches. You're going to sell it to me. Now Trump has imposed 50% tariffs on India. What that means is that the moment you send me the consignment of watches that I have paid for, the moment I receive the consignment, I'm going to have to pay the US administration, the US government, 50% of the cost of the price of my shipment. So I paid you $1 million. Now I'm going to have to pay the US government $500,000. And that makes it extremely bad for business for me. So I'm going to have to reconsider now that if I'm going to have, instead of spending just a million, I'm going to have to spend 1.5 million every time for something that costs a million. It's going to really affect my business, won't it? So then I'll say, okay, I'll stop importing from you. It's not good business. So I'll import from somebody else, from some other country. So it's going to it's going to hurt India's exports to the US. The US is the world's biggest consumer market, right? So India is now going to have to look for alternatives if the exports to the US dry out, because it's no longer good business sense for American companies to import goods and services from India. So then it deprives India of access to the world's biggest consumer market. And that's a problem. So India will have to now look for alternatives. Where do we look for alternatives? The EU, the Gulf region, maybe China. But China is not an import oriented market, it's an export oriented market. So what do we do? So it's gonna then one option is that we manufacture for our own population, for our own citizens, a consumption driven economy, but then our citizens are poor. Our GDP per capita is, I don't know, whatever it is, pretty low, very low. It's like African countries. It is what it is, right? So what do we do about this? For that, we need to raise our GDP, raise the earning standards, etc., of our population. For that, you need tremendous reforms. You need to boost. You need to boost the ease of doing business. Boost the manufacturing sector. So many things. So you need deep reforms, broad ranging reforms. But reforms is difficult. I mean, if you to for example, if the government wants to invest money in certain sectors and all that, they're going to have to find the money from somewhere. We have a lot of money in the country, but all the money is being used for various freebie schemes, Ladli Behna Yojana, and God knows what is Yojana. And if the government stops doing those yojanas, next election, end of story. Because the Indian public is so addicted, so hooked to freebies, that it's going to be a disaster for the government. So that's the problem that India faces. That's the problem. But India does need reforms, and this is the greatest of opportunities for India to do deep and broad reforms. And if we do it right, if the government does it right, then in the next 20 years we will hopefully be a much larger, much stronger economy. So it's not going to be short term pain; it's going to be medium term pain, like 10, 20 years. But yeah, if so, India, the government of India, Prime Minister Modi has already made the choice that we will not cave into the US. We will not join the illustrious list of American vassals whose heads adorn the corridors of the West Wing. We're not going to do that. So then, in that case, if we made the choice, then we need to execute the reform. So it's a great opportunity for India to execute big reforms, big bang reforms, if the government can do it. And if that is done, then maybe in 20 years, we're going to be a whole different beast. So it's going to be a period of, it's a stressful period for India for a while. Sai Tijaredi says, will Latin America tilt towards China's orbit? Well, not too much. See, the Chinese are already in Latin America. They've been around for a long time, like 15 years at least, probably 20 years. I remember about around 2010 or so, there was this BBC documentary, "The Chinese Are Coming" or something, about China's investments in Latin America, in Brazil, in Africa, and so on. And it portrayed those investments in a rather negative light. Obviously, the Chinese are already there, and they are investing in various raw materials sectors in Latin America. Latin America, Brazil is a gigantic country, much larger than India. It's rich in resources. The Chinese want the resources. There are other countries in Latin America that are rich in lithium and cobalt and whatever else. The Chinese want that, and the Chinese will pay good money, will pay top dollar for those raw materials. So it makes sense for these countries to deal with China. Does it mean that these countries are tilting towards China's orbit? I'm not really sure about that. The US won't let that happen. Not too far. But Brazil is part of BRICS, so there is that. So it's going to be a balancing act. Anonymous scientist says Trump has appointed Sergio Gor as ambassador to India and special envoy for South and Central Asia. Is it bad news for India because he will engage with Pakistan and Bangladesh? Look, Trump essentially has what he has done is he's tried to appoint a viceroy for India, a guy with Sergio Gor. The US government is saying India will be in safe hands. Hey, by the way, we're not in your hands. He's an envoy, right? But that's the deal. So they've essentially appointed, hopefully from their perspective, a viceroy for India. So this is an attempt to re-hyphenate India and Pakistan, to drag India down to the level of Pakistan. So Trump is trying to bring Pakistan up, and he wants to drag India down. So then both can be equated and both can be re-hyphenated. And this individual, Sergio Gor, who is going to be the next ambassador, he's also the special envoy for South Asia, whatever the hell that means, and Central Asia. So South Asia, from the US State Department's perspective, it is the Indian subcontinent, but they don't call it the Indian subcontinent, they call it South Asia, because they want to erase the Indian identity of the place. So within South Asia, you have Pakistan, Bangladesh, all of that, right? Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, whatever else you could imagine. Afghanistan possibly. Yeah, it should be there. Yeah. Yeah. So he's going to engage with Pakistan. He's going to engage with Bangladesh. He's going to be stationed in Delhi, and in Delhi, the US is one of its biggest embassies anywhere in the world. So they have a big staff there, and yeah, he's going to essentially oversee the entire region as Trump's viceroy to the region, that sort of thing. Is it bad news? So the appointment of Sergio Gor per se is not bad news for India. The attitude of the Trump regime is the bad news for India. They are hell bent on rehyphenating India and Pakistan, and that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to deal with the next 3.5 or so years. And then after Trump is gone and some other president comes to power, we'll have to see how that regime uh, approaches relations towards with India. We'll have to see about that. But overall, I don't think this is a much better U.S. ambassadorial appointee compared to, let's say, Eric Garcetti, who was here for some time ago. He's gone. So now there's going to be a process. He's going to be He's going to have to be vetted by Congress and so on. But yeah, eventually, I suppose he will land in Delhi. MK says, why didn't the USSR make the CCP its vassal? Given the CCP's revolution, Chinese Communist Party's revolution would not have succeeded without Soviet help. You see, the Chinese Communist Party was led by Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong was a very canny, very sharp guy, and he himself had imperial ambitions for China. And he held Joseph Stalin in the highest regard. And as long as Stalin was the head, was the ruler of the USSR, China was very deferential towards the USSR. And the USSR did extend a lot of help to China, and possibly, uh, you know, with the objective of having China in their orbit. Now, when you have a nation of the gigantic size and scale of China, it's very hard to make it a vassal. The same problem exists with India. So that's why there are nations who want to balkanize India and deal with each bit and piece individually, separately. So Mao Zedong was very smart. He straight away went and captured Tibet, and he was aided and abetted by the Indian government of the time, who supplied the Chinese troops with rice. And because of all of that, and because China started developing its own industry and its military might, that's why it was not that easy for the USSR to make the CCP its vassal, to make China's vassal. And after the death of Stalin, you had Khrushchev, who came to power, and that's where the strife started. So then Mao Zedong took a whole different trajectory. He was no longer that aligned with the USSR, and that's what annoyed the USSR. And then there were these border clashes in the far east of Russia and China, the Ussuri River clashes, which made the two nations go completely divergent, on divergent trajectories. This was the Sino-Soviet split. So it's not like if I want to make somebody my vassal, I'm going to succeed. It's not that easy, right? Other than if it's a nation like China, they will not want you to make to be your vassal. So it's not like, okay, I have decided he will be my vassal, so so it will happen. They tried. Stalin did not try that hard, but Khrushchev probably wanted to have that happen and did not work out. So it's not like just because I want this to happen, it's going to happen. You can try, but it may fail because the other side is strong. And that is how it went. Anonymous scientist says, is RIC a possibility now? China is cozying up to India, and India is also carefully working with China. Okay, so is China cozying up with India? Is China behaving in a friendly manner with India? Is what we have to ask ourselves. What would be Chinese overtures of friendship? Is it like verbal overtures? Indians have this great love for words. Someone says nice words about you, and you're like, oh my God, we are best friends. No. In geopolitics, words don't matter. You can say all kinds of nice things, but what you do on the ground, that action is what matters. China is still consolidating its positions on the north bank, etc., of the Pangong Lake. They are still consolidating their positions militarily in Chinese occupied Tibet and across the border with Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. They are doing all of that. They have offered no concessions to India in terms of demarcation of the border. They have done none of these things. What is the crucial issue when it comes to India-China relations? What's the central problem? It's the boundary issue. What is the India-China border? Right now, it's India and Chinese occupied Tibet, that border, right? And it's undefined, it's undemarcated. Now, if you want stability in relations, if you want actual cozying up, then you want that issue to be settled first. As long as that issue exists and it's open, there's gonna be tension, and that's the central problem in the relationship between the two countries. Has China taken any steps to resolve the border issue? They're taking no such steps. It's just words. Yeah, the flights are resuming between the two countries, and the Chinese have allowed the Indian pilgrims to go to Kailash Mansarovar. All those nice little things they are doing, but the central issue still remains, right? So as far as I'm concerned, nothing has happened. Yeah, Prime Minister Modi is going to China at the end of this month. He'll probably meet with President Xi Jinping. Mr. Wang Yi was in Delhi a few days ago to probably lay the groundwork for Prime Minister Modi's visit and so on. It's good that the two leaders are going to be meeting on and off now, and tensions are lower, but the central issue isn't resolved. And as long as that issue resolves, there's always the possibility of some kind of disaster on the border, because there was some miscommunication or misunderstanding between the two sides on the ground, between the two armies. Then what do you do? So that issue is the central issue, and the Chinese want to keep it open. As long as that's the case, it's just tactical nonsense. There's nothing really happening on the ground. So, is RIC a possibility? Right now, it's far from a possibility. RIC will be seen together more often. It doesn't mean that they're going to work together as a coalition, as an alliance. That is far from happening. Far from happening. Geopolitical Dubey says, does China truly want the Ukraine war to end? Look, first of all, China cannot affect the outcome of the Ukraine war. It's entirely Russia driven. But look, what does it mean? What does this war mean for China? This war has been pretty beneficial for China, because it has completely isolated Russia from the West. The West has imposed every sanction imaginable on China, because of which, I beg your pardon, on Russia, right? The West has isolated Russia. The West has imposed every possible sanction that you can imagine on Russia, because of which Russia has become pretty strongly dependent on China. And that's great for China. That's great. And the Chinese have been selling Russia various kinds of equipment, maybe indirectly through other countries or whatever. Russia has been selling China lots of oil, more oil than they are selling us, okay, at discounted rates. It's been great for China. And if this war ends up with the further destabilization of the West and the further weakening of the EU and the West overall, it's great for China. Now, if the war ends and the West once again consolidates, then it's not such a great thing for China. So it will. So China most likely will want this war to continue. It will keep Russia isolated. It will keep Russia more and more, from their perspective, hopefully dependent on China, and that's good for China. So probably China will be happy if this war kind of meanders, continues for another couple of years, and battle lines are further entrenched, and that's the opposite of what Donald Trump wants, because he's desperate for the war to end, for a ceasefire, and that's not happening. Pavan says, what's GDP PPP? What does it indicate, and what does it have any actual significance? For example, China 40 trillion, US 30 trillion, India 17 trillion. It's purchasing power parity. It's about the true purchasing power of your currency based on your GDP, on your income levels and all that. So, for example, if I go to Switzerland and I want to buy a bottle of water, it may cost me about $40. Okay, giving a rough example, it may not exactly cost $40. It may cost you $35, something like that. So a half-liter bottle, hypothetically, of water in Switzerland will cost about $35. In India, it will cost you 15 rupees. You see the price difference for each item? For the same item, the same quantity of water in India costs 15 rupees, which is what? Which is about it's about 15 cents in US dollar terms, roughly. And in Switzerland, it costs $35. So the Swiss cost, if it's, let's say it's 40, it's about 2,000 times more than India, if my math is right. I'm just doing it on the fly. So you see the difference in purchasing power. So if the Swiss GDP per capita is like $50,000 per year, and India's GDP per capita is like 2,500, 3,000, and yet with that little money, $3,000 per year, the average Indian can buy much more, possibly compared to what the Swiss can buy. I'm just giving a very, very rough, dirty example, but I hope you get the point. So if you base your calculations on that purchasing power of your currency and how much your income is and what the prices of various commodities are in India and other countries, then you come up with a whole different set of criteria and a whole different set of figures, and that's GDP PPP. That's how it works. So from that perspective, China is 40 trillion, India is 30 trillion, the US is 30 trillion, India is 17 trillion. That's a different way of looking at it. Saxon says, can BRICS make their own currency to trade with themselves? If yes, then India can bring the UPI technology stuff to distribute it. Is it practically possible? Okay. There's been a lot of talk of BRICS currency, and lots of Indians seem to be in favor of that. So a BRICS currency would be a currency that's a common currency between a number of nations. Originally, you had 5 BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And now there are more countries that have joined BRICS. So let's say whatever the number is, let's say it's 10 countries. Let's say hypothetically 10 countries. It may be more, it may be less. I don't remember exactly. So if you have a common currency, it means that all the countries will obviously transact only in that currency. But such experiments have happened in the past. The best example is the European Union. Their currency is the euro. Yes? Well, you will find that the euro is essentially a rebranded Deutsche Mark. The Deutsche Mark used to be the currency of Germany. Germany was the most powerful and still is the most powerful economy in Europe. So when the euro was created, it essentially became a substitute for the Deutsche Mark, and it essentially continues the dominance of Germany in the European Union. So when you have a coalition of nations who come up with a common currency, it's going to end up being more favorable towards the largest economy in the coalition. It's going to give them the most benefits, and the other smaller economies will kind of become dependent on the larger economy. So then, if you have a common currency, where is the common bank going to be situated? See, if you lose control over currency, you lose your economic sovereignty. Do you understand that? You lose your economic sovereignty. One of the reasons why the EU nations are not sovereign nations is because they have no control over their economies, because they don't have a currency of their own. They don't control the currency. That's one reason why the EU nations are not sovereign nations. It's pooled sovereignty. And when sovereignty is pooled, there's a center of power somewhere. And that center of power controls a lot about what happens with your economy or that guy's economy. So do we want to be in a position where China, the largest economy in BRICS, ends up controlling our economy? Do we want that? Yeah? So think about it like this. I don't think the BRICS currency is a good idea for us. I don't think it's a good idea. UPI technology, we can anyway use it. I mean, we can export it to other countries and gain some benefit out of it. We'll have to see how to make it feasible. So even if you export UPI technology to China and they are dealing in yuan, maybe they can use it in yuan, right? But I don't think the BRICS currency is a very good idea unless we have very stringent terms on it. Sai Teja Reddy says, how fragile is Middle East peace? Well, it depends on the main powerful nations. Look, if you look at Middle East, okay, let's go to the map and let's look at the region so that we understand what the situation is like. Okay, let's go to the Middle East. So the Middle East essentially is said to start from Iran. So Iran westwards, we have the Middle East, which includes the Arabian Peninsula, which is Oman, Yemen, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Then you also have Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Israel, Lebanon, right? And some would even include Egypt in that, but maybe not. So this is the region. Now, who are the main actors? One is Saudi Arabia, right? The other is UAE, pretty powerful economy. Then you have Iran, a very powerful nation. Then you have Iraq is a non-entity now because of the American occupation, which kind of still continues to some extent. Syria is now a regime change country, so it's done. It's just like Iraq. But you have Israel. So the main tension in the region is Iran versus Israel, Israel versus Iran, and there's also the Gaza issue and all that. So Gaza is now under control when it comes to Israel. They have Gaza, West Bank, all of that under control. The West Bank of the River Jordan and Gaza, all of that. They don't have any major issues, the Israelis, with their other neighbors. Everything is more or less under control. Syria is now a vassal of the US and Israel, so all is good there. Egypt is under control. The main problem from Israel's perspective is Iran. So now Israel is worried that Iran is attempting to become a nuclear power, and Iran has pretty good, let's say, allies in the region. One is the government in Yemen, the so-called Houthi rebels. They also have Hezbollah in Lebanon and various Iraqi elements and so on. And Israel also has power projection across the region. So that is the main flashpoint: Israel versus Iran. Is there a possibility that something again may flare up between the two countries? It's always a possibility. So the previous issue, the previous war between Iran and Israel that happened recently, a month or two ago, it was triggered by Israeli attacks on Iran. So the question is, will Israel attack Iran again? Right now, Iran doesn't look like it's in a position to initiate a war. Maybe Israel can. So it all depends on Israel's threat perception and whether they decide to initiate a new war with Iran. That is the main flashpoint right now in the Middle East. ICMBs says, am I very right to be very skeptical of fellow Indians getting excited about the alliance with China, the so-called alliance with China? I think it's more a temporary alignment of interests. You are very right to be skeptical about Indians starting to jump and dance about this RIC and this alliance with China and friendship with China. Hindi chini bhai bhai. I mean, how many times do you have to fall for the same old routine? Hindi chini bhai bhai. How many times do we have to fall for it? Alliance? What alliance? Can you have an alliance with a country with whom, which claims your territory? Who refuses to demarcate the common border? You can't have an alliance. You can at best have a modus vivendi, which is kind of a living arrangement. That's the best you can have. The Chinese don't want to demarcate the border with India. They don't want that to happen. And they are still consolidating their military positions north of Ladakh and north of Arunachal in occupied Tibet. When you have that situation, what alliance will you have? The best thing is you can hope for maybe a few years of peace, because right now both nations, India and China, are facing heat from the Trump regime, right? So maybe the Chinese right now, they feel like, and until I mean, think about it. Think about this. I mean, I cannot understand how naive Indians are. How many months ago was May? 2.5 months ago. 2.5 months ago, China was passing real-time live intelligence to Pakistan when Operation Sindoor, the 3-day war, was happening. Right? And now 2.5 months later, Indians have forgotten everything. Oh, China is again our bye-bye. I mean, how naive can Indians be? I don't understand how naive Indians are. I simply, it doesn't cease to astonish me every single day. New examples of incredible naivete. I mean, I I'm lost for words when I see how naive Indians are. I'm lost for words to describe how naive Indians are. Absolutely clueless people. Oh, China is good now. China is friendly now. Oh, Mr. Xi said some nice words. Mr. Wang Yi said some nice things. Their ambassador says nice things every day on Twitter. So now we are friends. So you are very right to be skeptical about Indians getting excited about the so-called alliance with China. Long way to go. Long way to go. The first precondition for normalization is a demarcation of the border, the India-Tibet border. That's the first precondition. Once that happens, then we can consider the possibility of a hypothetical alliance. And for that also, we have to work on every single aspect and parameter of what the parameters and boundaries and terms of the alliance will be. You have to work it out step by step in great, exhaustive, excruciating detail. It's not like, yeah, you two pilot each other, so you're allies now. I mean, how naive can Indians be? Indians imagine certain other countries are also our allies. Yeah, so you are right to be very skeptical, sir. Shivam Bakshi says, which country is more likely to disintegrate, India or China? I think China is very centralized, so maybe India is more stable. My thoughts. The more centralized a nation is, the more stable it is, especially a large nation with a powerful government. If the government is powerful and the system is centralized, then it's very hard to destabilize that government. If a system is already decentralized, it's so easy to fragment the system. It's the other way around, sir, Shivamji. If you have a weak government at the center and the system is centralized, then you can easily do a regime change or a coup or whatever. But when you have a powerful government at the center and the whole system is under one center, it's really hard to knock that off. It's really hard to fragment such a country. India has this great system of federalism. Every state has its own agenda. It's like trying to herd, herding sheep is very easy because sheep are sheep. Now try herding cats and see what happens. That's India. So if you really want to ask me which country has a higher probability of hypothetically disintegrating, India. That's why the Americans do subnational diplomacy. What is that? I mean, from the US perspective, what's the ideal situation? India balkanized. Then they will deal with each state individually and further balkanize and further uh, puppeteer those states. That's why all those initiatives are going on. All the industrial scale religious conversions and all the uh, dealing with various state level and regional level political parties and whatever else they're doing, right? Fomenting separatism in the Far Eastern states, launching Project K, Cookie Land for Christ, religious angles, linguistic angles. China doesn't have any of these issues. And China's CCP is incredibly powerful, incredibly well entrenched. Even if there's a regime change in the CCP and hypothetically President Xi Jinping is ousted, there's going to be somebody else who comes to power from the CCP itself. You see, it's not going to be somebody from some other political party because there is no other political party. The CCP has ensured that. So that's the situation. Which country is more vulnerable, India or China? India is more vulnerable. Understand that. Our system by design makes India vulnerable. This system of democracy and federalism, it's the main threat to India. Understand that. Shivam Bakshi says, will Ukraine become part of Russia in time after the war? Uh, in time, well, it depends on what do you mean by in time, right? If you say 6 months after the war, unlikely. Depending on, first of all, we have to see how does the war end whenever it does end. Right now, the war is not ending. We are nowhere close to a ceasefire. Trump is desperate for a ceasefire because he is 6 months late in his promise made to the American people. On day one of the presidency, I will end the Ukraine war. Well, where is the end of the Ukraine war? So he is desperate to end the Ukraine war. He wants a ceasefire at any cost. And Mr. Putin has been playing the other game, the opposite game. Slow war, frozen conflict. Let it go on. Let it go on. It serves his interests best. So Mr. Putin is in no hurry. Trump is in a tearing hurry. Is in a tearing rush. So I don't see this war ending anytime soon unless there are major concessions that are given to Russia, like a regime change in Kiev and more territory to Russia and that sort of thing. It's not going to happen anytime soon, as far as I see. Without major concessions, Mr. Putin will not agree to a ceasefire. So let's say a ceasefire happens X number of months in the future. What happens then? That will be a partition of Ukraine. Where does the partition happen? Does it happen where the current lines are? Does it happen further west? We don't know. Does it happen along the river Dnieper? Does it happen somewhere else? The war will end with the partition of Ukraine. But then what happens to the rest of Ukraine? I suspect that some rump state will remain. some portion of Ukraine that will not be part of Russia, but a significant portion of Russia of Ukraine is already part, more or less, de facto part of Russia, and I suspect that by the time the war ends, more territories of Ukraine will be absorbed by Russia. I don't think they want the whole of Ukraine, but I'm pretty certain they will. At the end of the day, they're going to acquire more territories. So not the whole of Ukraine. I don't think so, but much more than, definitely s- some more than what Russia currently occupies. Macron, says Mr. Anonymous Scientist, mentioned BRICS in his tweet comments. I kind of saw the tweet by Macron in which he makes a mention of BRICS. My comments, I think it's interesting. I think it is a sign of rebellion against the US. Okay, like I've said so many times, France is the only nation in NATO and in the EU that has a quasi-independent foreign policy, and they chafe at being under the yoke of the Anglo-Saxons. That's the worst situation for them. The French are a very proud people. They have no love for the Anglos. They fought the British, the English for 1,000 years, and those memories persist, and they don't want to be under the thumb of the Anglos. And currently, they kind of are. So it is great for France if they get to collaborate and cooperate with India in areas of mutual benefit. And there are plenty of areas of mutual benefit and mutual interest between India and France. And now it appears that India is going to go ahead with the joint development of jet engines with Safran. The jet engines will be manufactured in India, produced entirely indigenously in India, with in a partnership with Safran. So that's going to make a lot of money for France as well. And there's a lot of scope. There's a lot more scope for cooperation between India and France in the future. France and Monsieur Macron also wants good relations with China and other BRICS countries. So it makes sense that he mentioned BRICS, and not in a negative way, and that is going to upset Mr. Trump, because Mr. Trump is very anti-BRICS. So that is a direct, he's thumbing his nose at Trump, and he's also, it kind of indicates the direction in which the French India and French France BRICS relations are poised to go in. So yeah. Geopolitical Dubey says stuck in BCom. Look, I would be happy to answer these questions, but this is a geopolitics live stream. Like I said in the beginning, I said let's discuss geopolitics today. Okay, so I will not take this question. I apologize, but I will not. See, the viewers are here for geopolitics. I will only discuss geopolitics. Okay, Amisha Mishra says, why is Nepal opposing India-China trade deal? Jaishankar, sharp response to Trump. If you have a problem buying oil from India, don't buy it. What's my take? So these are two completely different topics you're asking, but let's deal with this. Nepal. Why is Nepal opposing the India-China trade deal? No, it's very simple. Nepal claims some Indian territory, Lipu Lake or something, and India and China are resuming trade across the border, across the India-Tibet border, and one of the trading points is going to be Lipu Lake. And Nepal says that Lipu Lake is our territory. I don't know what's the basis of this claim or whatever, but they claim it's our territory, and that's why they're opposing it. That's about it. Jaishankar, sharp response. Look, that's okay. I don't care about verbal exchanges. If you have a problem buying oil from India, don't buy it. Okay, that's okay. See, the relations are in such a position that you can afford to uh, indulge in sharp rhetoric. In the past, an Indian foreign minister would not have uh, commented so sharply about a US president or about the United States. Won't have happened. But today relations are in such a situation that, yeah, go for it. So at the end of the day, it's all words. What really matters is what happens on the negotiating table, what actually transpires in real terms, not in terms of words. We Indians love to focus on what this guy said and what that guy said, and our foreign minister gave a sharp response, and our foreign minister gave very harsh words. Who cares about words? At the end of the day, our economy needs to grow. Okay, that's what matters. All these words, blah blah blah, it's all fine. How does the relationship progress? That is important. Are we going to, at some point in time, reach a trade agreement with the US, a trade deal? Trump has been pushing for a trade deal. Is that going to happen? That's more important than what Jaishankar said. So yeah, and Dr. Jaishankar's response is absolutely correct. I mean, if you have a problem buying oil from India, don't buy it. Buy it from somewhere else. So what the deal is that India is importing crude oil from Russia, refining it, and then selling it to other countries like the US, like the EU nations, or whatever. And if Trump has a problem with that, then stop buying it. That's all he's saying. Bhaskar Gupta says, why opposition votes against IM in what is IIM? I'm not sure about this. This is about Indian politics. I will not deal with Indian politics. I don't talk about Indian politics. MK says, who are more deracinated in values and culture, Indians or Chinese? In which communities, which developed country communities are not deracinated in culture and values apart from Jews? Mm, Deracination. Now, once again, I ask myself, is this geopolitics? Of course, deracination and all that, it does influence geopolitics because a nation with more self-respect behaves in a different manner. So I will take this. Okay, who are more deracinated in values in culture, Indians or Chinese? I think the Chinese, their culture was devastated by the Chinese Communist Party in the 20th century. The Buddhist culture, the indigenous culture, all the temples were destroyed. The Shaolin temple was destroyed. Its library was burned by Chinese idiots, by Chinese Communist Party workers. Right, but now they have rebuilt everything and they've made it more glorious than before. So now they've discovered the value of their culture. So the Chinese are today, I would say that rather proud of their culture. The most Chinese you will find, especially young people, are atheists. They say, "Oh, my grandmother believes in Buddha and all, but I have no understanding of it." That's what they'll tell you. If you meet a Chinese person, a young Chinese person in their 20s and 30s, my grandmother, if a Chinese person comes to India, for example, and they go to some tourist place and they'll see a statue of some Hindu gods or maybe Buddha, they may not understand the Hindu gods, but if they say Buddha, they'll say, "Oh, Buddha, Buddha, yes, Buddha. My grandmother worships." But it is very strange. I have no understanding. Completely deracinated. Indeed. But uh, they still kind of value their culture and they are proud of their country. So Indians, I think Indians and Chinese are equally deracinated, but the Chinese don't have an inferiority complex. They have kind of a superiority complex. The Indians are slightly less deracinated, perhaps. I would say the current generation, Gen Z, is super deracinated. Uh, and the problem with India is the inferiority complex. Even if you are, let's say, deracinated, but if you don't have an inferiority complex, if you're proud of your country, then you're gonna end up being a more powerful force overall. So I would say that the biggest problem with India is, the problem in India is twofold. First of all, deracination, which is systematically done at so many different levels, and secondly, the inferiority complex. Indians have this massive inferiority complex. Even the youngsters, they have it. The moment they see a white skinned person, is like, "Oh, sar, you are better than us. You're superior." Automatically, the thing kicks in for some reason. Uh, so overall, the Chinese don't have it at all. Even the Afghans don't have it, but Indians have it for whatever reason. Um, which developed communities are not deracinated in culture and values apart from Jews? Well, I don't know. You're gonna ask me to go around the world. You can discuss every. Um, is the US deracinated? They don't have any roots. The US, their roots are piracy. See, the Americans, their values are Anglo-Saxon values. The people who colonized the Americas, the English speaking peoples, there were multiple waves of colonization: the Spanish, the French, the Anglos, the English, but the English succeeded, right? So the Anglos who colonized the Americas were mainly pirates. The UK used to engage in piracy slightly, not officially but unofficially. So you had Jamestown, which was a disaster, and then you had Plymouth, which was pilgrims and so on. um, So are they true to those roots, the piracy roots? They kind of are. Australians are also not deracinated. They're also very true to their Anglo and piracy roots. And yeah, you can go around the whole world and discuss each country in detail that way. MK says, was China behind Pakistan, Russia, Druzhba? Possibly. Could be. It is possible. But I'm speculating. I don't really know. At the end of the day, I'll not blame China for that. It was Russia's decision. Whether it was influenced by China or not, it doesn't really matter from my perspective. My perspective is that Russia went and did this, right? So I don't know. We don't know for sure who was behind it. Maybe it was just Russia. Maybe China may have nudged them in that direction. We don't know. But it's a possibility. Sayantan says, will Trump's tariff policy lead to the fall of the US? No. Nope. Literally, Officer K says, is Pakistan facing an internal crisis in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa? Do you believe we could see a Taliban incursion into the rightful Pashtun lands? There, there- there's there's a problem in the region, no question about it. Pakistan is facing problems in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They're also facing problems in Balochistan. Now, understand this properly. The Taliban are not a professional army. They are trying to professionalize their military, but they're not a fully professional military the way the Pakistani military is. I'm not saying the Pakistani military is as professional and as proficient as the Indian military. We saw the difference in quality in May, Operation Sindoor. So we don't need to compare Pakistan with India. Let's keep that out of our minds. But the Pakistani military still is a professional military. And if there is an actual war with the Taliban will be defeated 100 times out of 100. Please understand that. Okay? A Taliban incursion into the rightful Pashtun lands? No. And I'll tell you why. So most Indians will not know about this. But the Taliban receives a stipend of between 30 to 80 or maybe $100 million in cash per week from the US. You heard that right. The Taliban receives a weekly stipend from the US. Various figures have been put between 30 to $100 million in cash per week. So when you are receiving a stipend from the US, a weekly stipend, you are a US vassal in some way. Not in all ways, but in some ways. So you must know perhaps that before the Americans handed power to the Taliban, there was a Doha deal, a secret deal between the US and the Taliban. All aspects of the deal have not been made public. Only some aspects of the deal have been made public. There are some secret clauses to the agreement which are secret. So what is that? We don't know. So the Taliban has an understanding with the US. The Taliban probably they have been told that you can take this country, you can do whatever you wish with it, you can impose Sharia law, you can do whatever, but certain things you cannot do. Maybe you can't invade Pakistan. Maybe you can't allow you can't allow China to create the China-Pakistan economic corridor or the Belt and Road initiative through Afghanistan. And don't allow the Chinese to invest in your whatever sector or whatever. That sort of thing. And as long as Taliban does that, they keep receiving this stipend from the US, which allows them to run their country in some sense of comfort. So when the Taliban has such an arrangement with the US, and when Pakistan is a US vassal, do you imagine that Taliban will end up invading Pakistan? Not going to happen. Okay. Rishi Verma says, can India's multi-alignment survive US-China clash? Well, there's not much of a US-China clash happening right now. So Trump started his trade war with 125, yeah, I think it was 125% tariffs eventually on China. I think it started with 100% tariffs, then he raised it to 125. Right now, I'm not sure. It's a different number now. So right now, the US and China are not clashing. You see, they have reached some kind of compromise for now, and the tariff numbers are definitely lower than 100%. Eventually there could be some kind of showdown between the US and China. It depends whether it happens or not. Will there be a Taiwan showdown? Will there be a technological showdown? I think it's in both nations' interests not to have a hot war. So I think this competition, this rivalry between the US and China will play out in different sectors in different ways. Mostly it's technology driven rivalry. And if there's a clash of war, then you stay out of it, right? If you're India, you stay the hell out of it. You say, this is none of my business. I'm out of it. You guys carry on. That's what you do. So you carry on. So can India's multi-alignment? I don't care about multi-alignment. I just care about India. Does India survive a US-China clash? Absolutely. And India's policy of multi-alignment will also continue. So yeah, overall it will. It will. Nilay Srivastav says, as India has technology to put a helicopter on, what is that? B. One second. What is that? Okay, a spacecraft. Okay, on the moon and in Mars orbit. This implies India can make ICBMs as part of will, as per will. Is that true? Also, if the Earth's perimeter is 40,000 kilometers, how can a 13,000 ICBM reach the desired target on Earth? Okay. What is the Earth's perimeter? Um, let's look it up. Let's look it up. Okay. Let's look up Earth's perimeter. Earth perimeter. Earth perimeter is 40,000 kilometers. Okay, fantastic. 40,000 kilometers. All right. First of all, let's address the first part of the question first. India has the technology to put a spacecraft on the moon and in Mars orbit. It means India can make ICBMs. Of course, India can make ICBMs. You can use the PSLV as an ICBM. You can. Of course, you can use the PSLV as an ICBM. But understand that when you are building the PSLV, it takes a lot of time. And the PSLV has multiple stages. Some of these are liquid fueled. If you want to use a rocket as a weapon, you want solid fuel rockets, because liquid fuel will evaporate. You can't keep liquid fuel in a rocket for long because it is cryogenic. It is at very low temperatures. Liquid oxygen, sorry, not nitrogen. Usually it's oxygen or hydrogen or some hypergolic fuel or whatever. Hypergolic fuel is possibly solid fuel, but see, liquid fuel is generally liquid gases. You can't store liquid gases for a very long period of time. So a PSLV can be used as an ICBM, but in warfare, if it is ever used, ICBMs, if you want them to be reliable and available on demand at 5 minutes notice, you want solid fueled ICBMs. And that's a little more challenging. I think India already has the technology to make an ICBM, a missile that can reach any part of the world with solid fuel. Yeah, so India anyway has ICBM technology, no question about it. Perimeter is 40,000 kilometers. How can a 13,000 kilometer ICBM reach any target on the Earth? See, it's 40,000 kilometers at the equator. At higher latitudes, at lower latitudes, it's going to be different. So it's just a question of geometry. But if you take an actual globe and you point and you map a straight line, a curved, it's not Euclidean geometry anymore. It's Riemannian geometry because it is curved surfaces. But if you actually calculate it, it's going to be enough to reach any desired location of importance. Okay. Next. Oopsie, where are we? Where are we? I kind of lost. Give me a second. Okay, fine. Okay, Saksham, I guess, says, if the US dollar loses dominance in 20-30 years, which currency will lead globally? If the US dollar loses dominance in 20-30 years, which currency will lead globally? The euro, the Chinese yuan, or a new digital multilateral currency? We have no idea. In 20-30 years, you may have new currencies. Can't say. The euro, no chance the euro will do it. Why? Because the euro is the currency of a coalition of vassals, which is led by the US. If the dollar loses dominance, then the EU will fragment. If the US empire becomes weak, then the European Union will no longer stay cohesive because it is held together by the US. Most of you will not be able to see it. That what are you talking about? Ye sab kya baat kar raha hai? What are you talking about? The EU is blah blah blah. The EU is held together by the US. The moment the US becomes weak, the EU nations will go in their own directions. And all the old European rivalries will resurface and their heads will reappear. So if the US dollar loses dominance in 20-30 years, which means the US empire becomes significantly weaker, then the euro will also collapse. Then it could be perhaps the Chinese yuan, the Russian ruble, maybe the Indian rupee. Digital currencies, multinational currencies, I'm not sure about that. Multinational currencies are usually currencies that benefit only one nation, actually. So, Activa, thank you very much. Thank you. No question, but thank you. And Activa, once again. Um, this is not a geopolitics question. How do I find your standalone Amazon Kindle? I don't have one yet. Once I start publishing, you will have it, and I'll put the links out. All right. All right. Thank you, sir. I'll put the links out on the community page. You'll find it then at that point in time. Pranay Kumar says, how to counter mass and social media psyops in India. How to counter that? Well, these social media psyops are done at the government level. So if it has to be countered, it has to be countered at the government level. What governments do is that they create these massive numbers of automated accounts, fake accounts, also called bots. Okay, maybe 100,000 bots, and they all amplify a certain message. And they also will uh, you know pay certain influencers, let's say influential people with, let's say, large numbers of followers. They'll pay such people to further amplify the narrative. So you have some people on your payroll, some reasonably prominent people. You will also pay some people from some think tanks or whatever to write and say good things about or bad things about a certain country. And then you will have all these little fake accounts to amplify that. And that's how you can trend hashtags and do all kinds of stuff. So it is done at multiple levels. How do you counter that? By doing it yourself in the opposite direction. So I would have expected the government of India, the Modi government, to have done this by now, but they simply haven't. It doesn't look like they have uh, chosen to take up, the social media battlefield, because clearly there are no bot accounts or all these massive influencer, psyops or whatever that are pro India. It's always anti India. So it looks like India has decided not to play the game at all. So what can I say? Ashutosh Soni says, if BRICS decides to launch a BRICS currency today, how will it impact the global trade and what are the consequences of it? If there is a harmonized RIC group, how will it help the global trade? There's not going to be a RIC group anytime soon, for reasons that I just explained some time ago. If BRICS decides to launch a BRICS currency, how will it impact the global trade and what are the consequences of it? If BRICS launches a global a currency, a unified currency, it's going to be a much more powerful currency than all the other currencies individually. So it will certainly impact global trade, and it will be a significant challenge to the US dollar. Because see, if you look at BRICS versus G7, if you look at the cumulative GDP of the BRICS nations, and you look at the cumulative GDP of the G7 nations, which includes the US, BRICS is now larger. It is now larger. So if the BRICS nations do come together and create a single unified currency, it's gonna be overall very impactful and a significant challenger to the hegemony of the US dollar. And if the BRICS nations decide that we will only trade in the BRICS currency, and other nations, let's say global south nations, third world nations, whatever you want to call them, they also feel tempted to do that, then it could end up very quickly raising a big question mark on the US dollar's hegemony and its status as the global reserve currency. And that will lead to an all out economic war, maybe even military tensions, because the US will not take it lying down. If a BRICS currency is launched, the US will possibly take military action against the weaker BRICS nations. Possibly, that's a real possibility. Brazil, for example, Brazil is a sitting. All the Latin American nations are sitting ducks for the US. They're all US vassals. So if this happens, there will be severe consequences for the weaker nations in BRICS. Brazil may undergo regime change. Brazil may even have military action on it. Which are the other members of BRICS? Let's quickly Google it so that I don't do any guesswork. Um, BRICS list of BRICS nations. Let's see this. BRICS countries. Which are the BRICS countries? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Then there's Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Indonesia, and the UAE. Well, if a BRICS currency is launched, then will the UAE decide to only trade in the BRICS currency? Then it will face immediate and severe consequences from the US. Indonesia, well, Indonesia cannot stand up to the US. Okay, Iran will face severe difficulties. Ethiopia will be decimated. So it's going to be severe consequences. The US will not take this stand sitting down, and they will launch punitive action on at least the weaker BRICS nations. Geopolitical Dubai says, when do we get a super chat episode for non-geopolitics topics? If you want one, I could do it. I can do two um, episodes in a week. Ask Abhijit, Saturday, Sunday. If you want non-geopolitics topics, well, let me know in the not in the live chat, in the comments later when the stream is over. Let me know if you want non-geopolitics topics. I could do that. I'll be happy to. Yeah. All right. Rohan Suneja says, I know many businesses in India which are on the verge of bankruptcy because of US tariffs. Don't you think we should conclude the deal fast? What deal? Given to the US? See, we have to ask ourselves this question, okay? What is it that the US wants from India? They want a deal, but what kind of deal? What kind of deal do they want? This is what Trump wants. He wants India to levy 0% tariffs on any American export. That's what he wants, which means that we can't tax anything that comes from the US. It has to be sold in India at the market price in the US, at whatever the US companies decide, that price. The government cannot have one paisa of revenue from that. That's what the US wants. It means that you open up the entire Indian market to US companies entirely. So we become an import driven market. What will that do? Tell me. US goods, it's true, will most likely be superior to Indian goods, and they will be available at super competitive prices in India. Then what will happen is that the Indian customer will only buy American imported products, which will destroy India's economies, India's industries. So you think that some businesses in India are on the verge of bankruptcy because of US tariffs. Once you do a trade deal with Donald Trump the way he wants, then all businesses in India will go down. Do you understand that? Have you thought of that, sir? Everything will go under. India's manufacturing sector will be shut down, locked, over, finished. And then the Indian agricultural sector will also be decimated because the US wants to dump their agricultural produce in India. So then you will get agricultural products from the US that come in at the same price, maybe cheaper prices than Indian agricultural products. American potatoes at 10 rupees kilo, but Indian potatoes are 20 rupees kilo. Hypothetical example. American tomatoes at 5 rupees kilo, but Indian tomatoes are 20 rupees kilo. What will you do then? It will destroy your farming sector. And their agricultural products are full of GMOs, genetically modified organisms. So it will sicken all Indians the way Americans are sickened. Go to the US and see how Americans live. They pop pills 5-6 times a day. All Americans. Most Americans are obese. You will have the same problems in India now. Their dairy products will come and destroy India's dairy industries. And their dairy products, they're horrific. They feed their cows things that should not be fed to cows. Okay? So you will be consuming that sort of thing. Do you want that? So right now, if some businesses are on the verge of bankruptcy because of US tariffs, if we do a trade deal on Donald Trump's terms, everything will be bankrupt. Please understand that, you people. Vivek Singh says, why are we looking to the West for jet engines, not to Russia, who are more likely to offer us source code, NATO infiltration in Ministry of Defense? Really? NATO infiltration in Ministry of Defense, is it? Okay, let's address that. See, we have the Tejas aircraft, and we want jet engines for that. Correct? Yes. So we want jet engines which will fit properly on the Tejas aircraft. So the Tejas aircraft was built keeping the American GE General Electric engines in mind, 404 or 414 or whatever it is. Our designers built the aircraft with American engines in mind of a certain shape and size. Now that the Tejas design is done and we are already in serial production, you can't now say that, okay, now I will change the shape and size and parameters of the whole aircraft, which will be another 10-year design, which will be another 10-year process to change everything. So we want, now that there's a problem with American engines, they're not sending us the engines or whatever, despite having taken the money. So we want a replacement engine. The replacement engine has to be the same parameters, the same size as the engine that the aircraft was built for. The Russian engines are ginormous. If the GE engine is this size, the Russian engines are that size. That size, huge beasts of engines. They are super powerful and all, but they are designed for gigantic aircraft, like the Sukhoi 30. If you compare the size of the Sukhoi 30 with the Tejas, the Tejas looks like a sparrow. The Sukhoi looks like a big eagle. Huge size difference. So the Russian engines are all designed in that manner. They are gigantic engines, huge, bulky engines, very powerful, sure. Now, if you ask the Russians, okay, please design smaller engines for us, that will be a 10, 15-year process, even for the Russians. So then why do that? You can't. I know the Russians are more reliable compared to maybe NATO nations, possibly. But the engines are incompatible with the aircraft that we have in mind, the Tejas and the future AMC and whatnot. So that's why we are not going for that, and we are going for probably Safran, the French manufacturer. Excuse me. Rishikesh says, is North Korea really as brutal as the Western media portrays it, or is it because it refuses to bow down to America? I have no idea how North Korea really is. It's a nation that's closed off. It's like a walled garden. There's a wall around the garden. Inside the garden, you may have nice things, you may have bad things. We have no idea. And even if you actually visit North Korea, you may not. See, the North Koreans are very suspicious of travelers, of outsiders. So if you do visit North Korea, you will be shown only some locations in North Korea. You will not be allowed to travel everywhere, and you will always have a minder or two minders with you. So that's how it is. So how do I know how North Korea really is? It is definitely true that the West demonizes countries that are not aligned with it, like it demonizes India, right? The portrayal of India on social media is terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. The Western media portrays India in very poor light. So I suspect that the same could be true for North Korea as well. So it's possible that North Korea may not be as brutal or as whatever the way it is portrayed in the Western media. Maybe it's much better, but I don't know. We don't know because it's closed off. So can't really say. But it's pretty likely it will not the way the Western media portrays it. I'm pretty sure of that. Godliness says the US under Trump is becoming even more mighty. Europe plus UK is now heavily investing in arms. Do you believe the Anglo-Saxon empire is rebuilding itself again? Are we moving towards imperialism again? So the US empire's behavior, the Trump regime's behavior is that of an empire. In the past, so the US has always been an empire, but they always pretend to be a democracy. They always pretend to be an ordinary nation and the leader of the free world and all that stuff. But under Trump, they've thrown away all those pretenses. Trump is behaving just like an emperor or a king would. He is bullying all his vassals. He has tossed aside the World Trade Organization and its rules. Those don't matter anymore, right? And he is dealing with each country individually. For you, this much tariff. For you, 30%. For you, you Pakistan, 19%. You, India, very bad, 50%. And that sort of thing. And they're threatening 500% tariffs on India. So what are they trying to achieve? They are completely upending the existing global economic order, which they created. They created the global economic order. Now they are undoing it. Right? Why is it that they are doing this? Is it because they feel like they're super powerful? I think they are less powerful comparatively than they were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the US was unchallenged. It was the only superpower. Even today, it's the only superpower, but today it has competitors like China and Russia. In 2005, China did not figure in the conversation, neither did Russia. So the US 20 years ago was way more powerful than it is today, comparatively. Comparatively. It did not have the challengers it has today. So today, the US seems to be less confident than it was before. And that's why it's trying to completely reshape the world order and bifurcate the world order. It's us against them. America and vassals versus China and whoever else. That's what they're trying to do. Is it becoming more mighty? I don't think it's becoming more mighty. But yeah, they are becoming more combative. They are becoming more harsh towards their allies and vassals. They are treating their vassals very badly. Recently, all the major EU leaders were humiliated by being trotted out to sit like obedient school children in front of Donald Trump, who lectured them all. And this was made into a big media spectacle. All the EU leaders sitting meekly in front of Trump. So Trump is behaving like an emperor, but Trump, like I said, has kissed the ring. So this is all being done by the deeper powers in the US, because they are now feeling less confident about the way the world is. And they are worried about China's technological rise. And they are also concerned about the potential future rise of India. So is the Anglo-Saxon empire rebuilding itself again? No, there's no rebuilding. It's already built, right? They're trying to preserve what they have. See, the global economic order, the so-called rules-based world order, was compared to what Trump is doing now, much fairer. And the US was concerned that our enemies are using our rules and the order we created to enrich themselves and to strengthen themselves. So let's destroy this order and let's create an order that will work only for us, for our benefit. And that's what they're doing. So we are not moving. Yeah, we are moving towards imperialism, a more naked imperialism. We are witnessing that now. Trump is behaving like the emperors of old days. Exactly. Deus Putra says, many of your deductions have turned out to be right, and I've been watching you since first episode. Thank you. Thank you very much. But for some reason, I don't even get one of your video suggestions in my feed. I hope you do well. A lot of people are telling me this. Yeah, it is what it is. Look, it's true. It's now. I think everyone's noticing it, that the channel is stuck at a certain point. Look, it's not in my control, so I don't worry about it. Okay, let the powers that are do what they want to do, and it doesn't concern me. I'll continue doing what I'm doing. I'm being told by so many people that my notifications never reach anyone anymore, which is pretty interesting, because some people do ring the bell icon and all that, so that they are notified. Anyhow, it is what it is. It's not in my control, so I am least concerned, and it doesn't affect me at all. I'm going to continue. But thank you so much for being a long time viewer. I really appreciate that, and I hope you do well too. Please continue doing well, sir. Thank you so much. Path says, Trump kissed the ring, is puppet of the deep state, but did things only to win a Nobel Prize. That sounds self-contradictory. Or is the deep state making fantasy real using Trump? Why is it contradictory? Why? He's doing everything the deep state wants him to do, but as a reward, he wants a Nobel Prize. What is so contradictory about that, sir? What is contradictory? I don't understand. Right? Trump was the right guy for the right time. Trump, if you see his old interviews from the 1990s, he used to talk about tariffs, that we need to impose tariffs on our nation. If I was the president, I don't have any political ambitions, but if I was in charge, I would use tariffs to do this, do that. He used to talk about tariffs in the 1990s. So he's always been a tariffs kind of guy. And now the deeper powers in the US seem to have decided that he is the right guy for the right time. He loves tariffs. Okay, let's use him to achieve what we want. The Chinese are using the system we created, the so-called rules-based world order, to make themselves powerful. So let's completely revamp the economic order, and make it such that the Chinese can't use it anymore to to benefit themselves. That's what they're doing. And so that's what the US is doing through Trump. So Trump is doing that, but he also has personal ambitions. He wants a reward. He wants this big. He has the money. Now he also has the power, but he wants prestige. If Barack could get it, I should get it. I ended so many more wars than Barack. That sort of thing. Okay, so there you have it. Yeah. Okay, what's next? Path says it's a different path. Okay. Hypothetical but can't be ruled out. What if the US puts a trade embargo on India and seizes the forex of RBI? How can the US seize the forex that belongs to the RBI? Foreign exchange. India's foreign exchange reserves will be in India, right? How will they come and take that without invading India? Trade embargo is a different story. Seize the forex of RBI. How do you do that? Yeah, that doesn't really work out. Foreign exchange reserves means you have that foreign exchange within the country, right? It's not sitting somewhere in the US that they can take it. So they can't. Murthy Tumuluri. Thank you so much, sir. Very nice of you. Thank you. Pratardana says, I'm sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong, sir. I apologize for that if it is the case. The question is, it looks like China and Brazil have hurt American farmers badly with soy trade. Okay, I have not kept an eye on the soy trade, so I'm not aware of this. What may have they done? China and Brazil have hurt American farmers. So when it comes to Brazil, if you look at the map, if you go to the map and see the satellite images, you will see that the Brazilians have huge land resources. Okay, let's go to the map. We will go to Brazil, huge nation. Let's go to the satellite, and you'll see a huge patch of green. Most of Brazil is green. It's the Amazon forest. Okay, and a lot of the Amazon forest, as you can see, will now be under a state of encroachment by farmers. Anywhere you see, you'll see farms. This was formerly forest. As you can see, this is now farmland. Huge patches of the forest have been cut down to create farmland. And you will see this encroachment all over the place. So these are Brazilian farmers. This may not look like farmland perhaps, but these are maybe future farms. Whichever way it is, there's a lot of farmland that's emerging out of the Amazon rainforest. And much of this farmland is dedicated to soybean plantations. So the soybean plantations, let's see, is this a farm? Could be. This looks very, yeah, could be. My point is, the soybeans that are planted in Brazil, they are used. What are they used for? They're sold to American, the American animal agriculture industry, the American beef industry. Okay, the Americans they slaughter millions, maybe hundreds of millions of cows every year, and those cows for meat, obviously, and those cows are usually fed a soybean based diet, and much of this soybeans comes from Brazil. I don't know about China, but yeah, see, the Brazilians have so much land. They can always clear more rainforest and plant more soybeans and send it to the US, and I'm sure they do it at a cheap price. So maybe that's the deal. Perhaps I don't know about the Chinese. Are they also exporting soybeans to the US? I've heard about fentanyl. I don't know about soybeans, but now with the tariffs, it will be harder for them to do that. Yeah. Arnab Banerjee says, "What's your opinion on Sergio Gor, the new US ambassador appointee for India, and his main reason for coming to India?" Well, see, Eric Garcetti was the Biden appointee. He was the governor to, sorry, not governor. What am I saying? Ambassador to India, viceroy, ambassador to India during the Biden regime. He's gone back. He's done. Now Trump wants to have his handpicked guy as the viceroy to India or ambassador to India. So he has appointed one of his close minions, Sergio Gor, who will eventually be in Delhi. and he has also appointed him as a special something for South Asia and Central Asia and all that. So, what's the purpose of him coming to India? Well, one of the purposes is to keep an eye on what's happening in India. Secondly, it is to rehyphenate India and Pakistan. So, Trump wants to elevate Pakistan, elevate Pakistan, invest in Pakistan, strengthen Pakistan, elevate Pakistan, and Trump at the same time wants to bring India down. Bring India down so that you can bring India and China and Pakistan at roughly the same level, at least from his perspective. From his perspective, yeah, India, China, India, Pakistan, same thing. So you rehyphenate India. Wherever you mention India, you also mention Pakistan. Wherever you mention Pakistan, you also mention India. In all your official communications, you always mention the two nations together. So you are rehyphenating India and Pakistan. The objective overall of the US policy is to contain India. Because India is the only large economy that is projected to not have a recession in the next 20 years. It's the only large economy that is poised to grow at a significant rate, GDP growth, for the next 20 years at least. And if that happens, even if India grows at 6% per year, even then, in 20 years, it becomes a significantly larger economy than it's today. And that will obviously transform India into a whole different sort of entity, a whole different beast, potentially a challenger, a future challenger for the US. So they don't want that to happen. And they want to take action right now to ensure it doesn't happen. That 20 years down the line, they are not in the situation that India is emerging as a new power, which can challenge them. So all of that, for that, you need people in the right places, people in Delhi, people in other places who can keep an eye on things and do things. So the US has this policy, right? They have the policy of subnational diplomacy in India, which means that their embassies and consulates will engage diplomatically with not with the Indian government, but with state governments, certain state governments. And the objective is to create more divisions in India. The Americans fund religious conversions, industrial scale religious conversions. They fuel soft separatist activities. They want to create divisions based on language, based on caste, based on culture, based on religion, based on politics. All these things. The US are past masters at this. That they have perfected the color revolution playbook. And in the next few years, maybe 2 3 years, they may want also to have some kind of regime change in India, because Mr. Modi is very inconvenient. He's standing straight, he's not bowing down, he's not caving in. So Mr. Sergio Gor will probably oversee all these operations. So there you have it, sir. Vikash Visak Nair says, how did the Rothschild family become so rich and powerful? Is there a replacement for banking systems? I don't know. I have not studied the history of the Rothschild family. I've heard all kinds of stories about them. Until today, I have not studied their history. So I will not be able to answer your question. Anyway, it's a historical question. So yeah. All right. Sorry about that. Murthy Tumuluri says, how do you see comments from Nimki on tariffs feedback? If you don't speak of Indian political situation, then how do we assess a coup situation, recent stunts from somebody? Okay, I'm not sure what is Nimki. How do I see comments from Nimki on tariffs? Feedback. If you don't speak of Indian political situation, how do we assess a coup situation? I'm not really sure what you ask. What is Nimki, first of all? Nimki. And look, okay, so I'm not able to understand what Nimki is. Okay, first of all, I don't speak of Indian political situation. I don't talk about internal politics. I talk about geopolitics, external politics. How do we assess a coup situation? There's no coup situation in India right now. Maybe there are plans for the US to eventually attempt a regime change of some kind in India, which would involve domestic politics, obviously, because in India you can't do a regime change through the military. India is not that sort of country. It's not that sort of system. If you study how coups are executed, you will understand that there are certain conditions that need to be in place in a country. A certain set of circumstances need to be satisfied for the country to be such that it is susceptible to a coup. And those conditions aren't satisfied in India. So you can't have a military coup in India. It just won't work. So what's the alternative? The alternative is a regime change operation, like something that takes time. So you can co-opt or subvert the electoral democracy in the country. You can influence the voters You can perhaps influence the voting mechanisms, or God knows what, and influence the state of election, the result of elections. Or if it's a country with a coalition government, you can try and break up the coalition government by uh, giving inducements to some coalition members, hypothetically, completely hypothetically I'm talking. And then you can, maybe hypothetically, if some opposition parties are aligned with you hypothetically, then you can use that to create misinformation, spread misinformation hypothetically. These are the things you can do. That's what I can tell you. I have a standing policy. I don't talk about Indian politics. So I will not talk about actual Indian politics. That's just how it is. Sorry about that. Parth Saleh says, what GDP per capita India before low or no tariffs? What GDP per capita India before low or no tariffs? Are you asking what should be India's GDP per capita such that Trump cannot impose tariffs on India? Well, Trump doesn't care about India's GDP per capita. It has nothing to do with India's. There is no correlation between India's GDP per capita and the tariffs that Trump is imposing. Absolutely no correlation whatsoever. So even if India's GDP per capita is, let's say, $1,000, or sorry, $10,000, it will make no difference to Trump. Of course, if India's GDP per capita is higher, it gives India more leverage because it means India's overall GDP is higher. So, what is our GDP per capita right now? Let me just see. Okay, it used to be 2,000 something. Maybe is it 3,000? Let's see. India GDP per capita in USD. $2,700 in 2026. Okay, it's about $2,700. India's GDP per capita. Now, let's say India's GDP per capita is, let's say, $10,000, which is four times that. It means India's overall GDP will also be four times that, which means India's overall GDP for that will have to be $16 trillion, which is a whole different beast. So then India will have more leverage. So I don't know, I can't really say, but for that to happen will take many years. So it's actually, see, as long as Trump is there, there's going to be tariffs, it looks like, and it will have no, and India's GDP per capita will have no bearing on that. Shivam Bakshi says, do you think Pakistan realistically can launch a nuclear strike against India if its masters tell it to? It can. If Pakistan's masters tell Pakistan to launch a nuclear strike on India, it will do that. So Pakistan, when I say Pakistan will do it, it means Pakistan's military leadership will do it. For that to happen, they will first ensure that all their family members, all their assets are moved outside of the country. Because you know what happens if they launch a nuclear strike on India. We know what happens. It can. It will do it as long as the Americans or the masters ensure the safety and security of the Pakistani military leadership, their families, and all their stolen assets, all the stolen wealth. As long as that safety is ensured, Pakistani military leadership will do it, even if it means the complete annihilation of Pakistan, which is guaranteed. Yeah. Nafrati Chintu says, JSR sir, how is Modi dealing with this current trade crisis as compared to blunders done by Nehru? Is he repeating the same or working for his legacy? Mr. Nehru never faced the situation that Mr. Modi is facing. Mr. Nehru never came under economic coercion from the US. India is facing the worst American economic coercion since 1947. Today. That's how bad the relationship is. India has never faced this level of economic coercion from the US ever before. So you can't compare what Mr. Modi is facing with what Mr. Nehru's time was, because Mr. Nehru never faced any of these issues. The blunders Mr. Nehru did, you can't compare that with anything related to Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi did not give away the Kabo Valley to somebody, to Burma. Mr. Modi did not refuse multiple offers of permanent UN Security Council membership. Mr. Modi did not refuse the offer of nuclear weapons technology. Mr. Modi did not help China invade Tibet by supplying Chinese soldiers with rice. You can't compare. There's no comparison. All right? We have to first understand that. Secondly, Mr. Nehru, like I said, never faced American economic coercion the way Mr. Modi is doing, because Mr. Nehru, his economic policy was to not have any economic growth in India, 2%, 3% growth per year, the Nehruvian rate of growth. Mr. Modi is trying to grow India's economy as fast as possible, despite all the challenges he's facing, internal problems and all that. So Mr. Modi is trying to make India into a real power, and that's the problem he's facing. That the US doesn't like it at all. The US is worried about that, right? So Mr. Modi is dealing with this as best as he can. The alternative to this is you become an American vassal and you say goodbye to the Indian dream. So Mr. Modi is saying, no, I will not make my country an American vassal. We will stand straight. We will face the storm. We will withstand the storm, and we will come out of it stronger. That's what he is doing. So I really commend what Mr. Modi is doing. And of course, India is facing problems. And that's why the opposition apparently is dancing and shouting and screaming from the rooftops. Look at Mr. Modi's policy. So many problems. Never had this before. Yeah, because you never had any ambition before. If you are unambitious, you will never face problems because you are not going anywhere anyway. It's only when you become ambitious and you stand up for yourself that you start facing problems from the rest of the world, because they are now threatened by you. That's why we are facing problems. So if you don't want problems, it means you have no ambition. Is that what you want? I mean, I'm not asking Nafrate Chin to you, but I'm asking everybody. Is that what you want? The moment you stand for something, the moment you take a stand and you decide that I have ambition, I have goals, and I'm going to go for it, that's when everybody stands against you. If you are a loser sitting at home and doing nothing, nobody stands against you. You'll have the easiest life, a life of no worth and no value. RL says, do our ministers' family study, live, study, etc.? Look, like I said, okay, let's take the question. Do our ministers' families live, study, and work abroad? US, EU gives them a leverage and can be arm twisted, compromising India, especially Dr. S. Jaishankar. Do you have to ask me about this? I suppose you can do a simple Google search and find out for yourself. Why are you asking me this question? Are you trying to put me in a spot? Is that what you're trying to do? I think all the facts are searchable. All the facts of whether any minister has any family abroad, or whether any minister has family members who are foreign citizens, all of this, I think it's available in the public domain. Is that potentially a problem for India? I think I will leave it to all of you to judge and decide. That's what I'll say. Does it give leverage to foreign countries? I will leave it for you. I think you are all wise enough to judge and decide for yourselves. That's all I'll say about this. Mr. James is back. We educated you, made you literate, yet you harbor deep hatred for us Anglos. Tea. We gave you tea. James, you see, you did not educate us. You destroyed our education system. We had our indigenous education system. Okay, James, I'll tell you what. Picture this scene, my friends. All of you, including our friend, Mr. James. Picture this scene. Fire. Fire that lasts for months. Verses in Sanskrit that are being turned to ash. Mathematical equations written in Devanagari or whatever script, turning to ash and returning to the cosmos. What is that? That was the destruction of the Indian education system, first phase, done by the Turks. So they destroyed our records of history, the records of our history, right? We had the world's most sophisticated education system. We invented the concept of the university. The world used to come to India to study. The Chinese, Xuanzang, Fahian, the Greeks, the Babylonians, the Mesopotamians, the Koreans, the Scythians, the people from Suvarna Bhumi, from Southeast Asia, everyone used to come to India. Xuanzang walked on foot 16,000 kilometers across treacherous deserts and frozen mountain ranges, risking his life over and over again to reach India and study in India. Okay? We had the world's most advanced, most sophisticated education system. The Arabs acquired their knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, pharmacology, toxicology, science, all of that, algebra, all of that from India, and they credited India for that in their books. Then that knowledge was transmitted to Europe eventually, and the Europeans did not credit India for any of that. And all of the European advancements that eventually happened in science, astronomy, technology, all of that, why did it happen? Because they were standing on the shoulders of giants, our ancestors. Now, when the British came to India, we still had some form of education system that had continued. We had a temple-based education system. Every town, every city, every village had temples, and temples were not just merely places of prayer; they were places of education. That's where kids got educated. You learned your basic mathematics, arithmetic, basic grammar, Sanskrit, all of that stuff. You learned Itihasa, Purana, Mahabharata, Ramayana, all of that. And if you wanted to study further, you could go to a bigger temple, or you could go to a Vishwavidyalaya, university, to study. But the Vishwavidyalaya's were destroyed by the Turks. So you would go to temples to study. And you still could learn a lot. The British ended that. And they imposed their abysmally inferior education system on India. The colonial education system, which was designed to prevent Indians from turning out, from producing leaders. It was designed to mass produce clerks and peons. And that's why the Indian mindset today is stuck at the level of clerks and peons. There's no leadership level thoughts coming out of India today because of the education system that still continues. So just because you imposed your inferior language upon us doesn't mean that you made us literate. If you genocide a people, they will harbor some form of hatred towards you. Now, I have no antipathy or hatred towards the people of England today. But if some of them come to me and tell me that we educated you, well, that's a problem for me. I don't harbor hatred towards the English. I've been to England, no issues. But some of the English, they still have this attitude of superiority. There's nothing superior about you. Just read what the Romans wrote about you. Check it out. All right, cheerio, James. Spade says, Sir, I heard that China has lied about its population, which may be less than 1 billion, being an authoritarian regime with a one-child policy. They lack real domestic demand and thus may stay export-oriented. Okay, population, domestic demand, export-oriented, there are multiple issues, multiple topics here. I think it's possible that the Chinese may have kind of exaggerated their population numbers. I think it's definitely possible. See, the China's official population right now is what, 1.4 billion? It's possible it may be maybe 1.2 billion, maybe 1 billion. It is possible. It is also possible that GDP numbers may be inflated and fake. A lot of things are possible about China. So it's entirely possible that their numbers are inflated and they don't represent the actual truth on the ground, fact on the ground. One child policy, yeah, that has led to the population collapse. And true, yes, that's true. They lack real domestic demand. They do lack domestic demand. I mean, they have a manufacturing overcapacity. They have built an economic, a manufacturing base that represents an overcapacity for considering the purchasing power of their population, and that's why they are an export-oriented economy, because they became the manufacturing base for the entire world, and that's the trap that Trump has laid for them. that if you impose massive tariffs on China, then they can't export to the US market. Then what do they do with the manufacturing overcapacity? That will kind of be a huge problem for the economy, and that's the problem China is facing. And maybe that's why they're trying to dilly dally with India without actually resolving any of the real issues that lie at the heart of the problems that exist between India and China. And those problems are of China's own creation. So, Achintya Anand says, does dragging negotiation favor us in trade deal? It depends. See, generally, if a negotiation goes on longer, it generally favors the side that has more leverage. A side, see, there are two parties in negotiation. This guy and this guy. Let's say this is US, this is India. Okay? Okay, that's blue is India. This is blue, this is India, this is the US. So now the side that is more powerful has more leverage, and longer negotiations generally favor them. But if a side is in a hurry, if one of the parties is in a big hurry and the other one is in no hurry, then it generally dragging the negotiations will favor the one who is not in a hurry. So it depends. But when it comes to a power asymmetry, the US is way powerful, India is much less powerful, then any negotiation will always favor the side that's more powerful, that has more leverage. And even if the negotiation drags on, it may favor the more powerful side. CSP TV says, your opinion on the recommission of Nakhimov ship. I have no idea what that is. Let me check it out. What is this Nakhimov ship? Let's see. Let's ask our friend Google. Nakhimov ship. What is that? Russian battle cruiser Admiral Nakhimov. SS Admiral Nakhimov 25 is third project or land something battle cruiser. Originally part of the Soviet Navy, Kalinin. It was renamed, etc. Navikov, blah, 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 blah. Since 1990, it is undergoing repair and refit to get more weaponry, scheduled to re-enter service, delayed till 2024. And it has now begun factory C trials after repairs and modernization. Fantastic. Congratulations, Russia. Well, okay. I don't think it's like a groundbreaking news or anything. One more battleship in the Russian army, in the Russian Navy, good for them. Maybe it's pretty capable. All right, good for them. It's a boost to their naval power. Okay. Prathar Dana says, X also hides your posts despite the bell being pressed. Well, yes, I've had a pretty interesting history on social media. I'll tell you what. For about 3 years, it was called Twitter earlier, right? So for about 3 or 4 years, I was stuck on 64,000 subscribers on Twitter. For 3-4 years, 64,000 subscribers. I used to tweet a lot back in the day. I used to get a lot of engagement, but my subscribers was 64,000. Prior to that, one morning, I think it was in 2018 or something, don't remember which year it was. One morning I wake up and I see that my Twitter follower count has dropped by exactly 20,000. So in one night, they cut out 20,000 of my followers. Gone, vanished. Few months later, one morning I wake up, another 7,000 gone. Not 7,223 or something, exactly 7,000. So once they removed my subscriber count, they reduced my subscriber count by 20,000. 20,000. Few months later, it was 7,000. And my subscriber numbers were stuck after that at 64,000 for like 3-4 years. The moment Jack Dorsey moves out and Elon Musk comes in, my subscribers start growing again. So clearly there was something at play. It's neither right now 200,000 plus something. So is it now that again my posts are being suppressed? I have no idea. Well, you see, this is what happens when you have foreign platforms. Okay, so you can't complain about it. These are their platforms. They own them. They can do whatever the hell they wanted with it, and it is what it is. So my philosophy in life is very simple. See, I'm a very simple person. If there is something that's beyond my control, I don't worry about it. I don't complain about it. Let it be. You do what you want, you do what you can, and let the rest be in the hands of the gods. If you can't control it, leave it to the gods. That's all I'll say. uh, Anupa Pandey, opinion on increasing India-Philippines relations. Well, in Philippines is the Maharlik Islands, right? It used to be part of the Chola Empire. They used to be Hindus back in the past. Today, they don't even remember that. But that's old history. Philippines faces a lot of coercion and a lot of bullying from China. Philippines has, for the longest time, been a US vassal also, which is very unfortunate for them. It is what it is once again. And we have sold them a few BrahMos units, and they may be in the market for a few more. So overall, India Philippines are on. There's a significant convergence of interests. So it's natural that the relationship can become stronger as time progresses, and we should do that. Yeah. So good. I'm glad. I'm glad. That's my opinion. Uh, Pratham Soni says, "What is India's national interest and tips in raising standards?" Well, two totally different questions and pretty big questions. Tips in raising standards. Look, I cannot give you lectures about raising standards. I can. There are lots of people who give lectures on YouTube about how to become better, a better version of yourself, and how to become more productive, and how to be more motivated, and so on and so forth. If you want to raise your standards, it's a very difficult process. It's like climbing a mountain. It's making small changes and being very consistent with those changes. It's pretty, and it's very hard. Most people don't have the appetite to do that. Most people are happy being comfortable the way they are. They want, in their mind, they see a different image of themselves, their true potential. But that's too hard to achieve. To achieve that, you have to break all the old habits and do very uncomfortable things for a sustained period of time. So it's difficult. You have to do very hard things to raise your standards. It's not easy. Oh, here are 5 tips to raise standards. Tomorrow you start that, and you'll be immediately have higher standards. No, higher standards means changing your habits and having new habits and executing them consistently for several months minimum. Then you will start seeing changes. That's where your standards rise. It's about sustained execution of difficult things, of things that make you uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. That's raising standards. Not easy, trust me. What's India's national interest? Well, to say it in short, the long term security, prosperity, and security and prosperity. And what's the one parameter that's missing? Um, Sovereignty. Long term sovereignty, security, and prosperity of the people and the nation. That's the national interest in a nutshell. Godliness says it will take it will take the US just one BJP defeat at the center to turn us into a vassal. Either go for a one party system or just wait for the day when the Indian PM will also be dictated at the Oval Office. I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. There's nothing more to say. I agree with you. Prathardana says GDP, PPP, more, which is more important? Um, Purchasing power overall in the context of the entire of the global world, I would say the GDP is more important. That's how I see it. I've always paid more attention to GDP and less to PPP. So from my perspective, the way I see it, GDP is more important. There are people who will say that PPP is more important. People who want to portray China as being ahead of the US, they will say that PPP is more important. Uh, but I think that's not quite the case. The way I see it, GDP and not purchasing power parity, but the other GDP figure, that is more important. Okay. Next, Dhruv Patel says, why were wars swift and focused on annexation at the time of kingdoms, but now are slow despite advanced weapons? It's not entirely the case that wars were always swift. I mean, Google this, the 100 Years' War. Okay? There have been wars that have lasted forever. Imagine a series of conflicts that goes on for 100 years. You had many extended campaigns, lots of extended campaigns. So it all depends on a variety of factors. For example, see, I'll give you an example. World War One. It begins what, around October or something? 20. Sorry, what I was saying? 1914. October or something, 1914. Um, and it was supposed to be over by Christmas, that is December 25. We will be home by Christmas. That's what the belligerents were expecting. But what happened was that it went on until 1919, right? It went on for a whole lot of time, and it became a ghastly, ghastly war, trench warfare, abysmal conditions. So that also went on for such a long time. So at that time, you had kingdoms and empires. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was one of the major belligerents, and they essentially started the whole thing by giving that ultimatum to Serbia. Right? They sent an ultimatum, the kind of ultimatum that Serbia simply could not agree to because of the wording of the ultimatum. And eventually, and all these powers, they were planning for a war. They were planning for a decisive war for years, and it all just happened like that suddenly. In the space of 12 days, everybody is at war. Anyway, I don't know why I'm giving you the history of World War One. If you want a little more history of World War One, the period from 1871 to 1914 was actually a Cold War period, which nobody realizes. It was a Cold War period, and during the time, all these European powers were planning and plotting the next major decisive war, which would make them, which would give them the political outcomes they wanted. And it all came together in 1914 in October, and they all thought it would be over by Christmas, and it turned out to be an absolute disaster. So my point is that, it's not like all the wars used to be swift and focused on annexation and all that in the past. No, wars could go on for a century in the past. So yeah, you have to actually look at history from a broader perspective to understand the context in which you can place today's wars. Today's wars also follow similar patterns, but the technology is changed. Even World War One, the technology was very different from the previous wars. It was like the trial of completely new kinds of technologies and weapons. That was World War One. It was kind of like today, Ukraine war. In the Ukraine war, we are the two sides are trying all kinds of new technologies that have never really been used in a major war before, similar to World War One. MK says, why do you say communism is a toolkit that concentrates power in the hands of a few people? Please don't ignore as communism played a significant role in geopolitics. I don't think this is a question that should be ignored. Okay. So, what does communism say? Communism say that the means of production must be owned by the people, right? The uh, the bourgeoisie, which is the capitalists, they monopolize the means of production, and they marginalize the proletariat, and they extract all value out of the proletariat, out of their time, and they keep all the profits, and that's wrong. So what needs to happen according to Marxism is that there needs to be a revolution which is led by the proletariat, and the outcome should be a dictatorship of the proletariat. That's what it says. Very nice concept, that the workers of the world should unite, take up arms, and all these capitalists and industrialists and all these wealthy people should be dealt with. Yeah, finished. And take all the wealth and create a dictatorship of the proletariat, which will represent the proletariat and work for the proletariat. Great concept. Nobody should be rich. Everybody should have the same amount of money, and everybody should have the time to do whatever they want. Very nice concept. What actually happens? Marx says there should be a revolution, a revolutionary war that gets rid of the capitalists and the bourgeoisie, the parasites. See, when there is a revolution is by definition a violent affair. I think we can agree to that, right? It's not a satyagraha. A revolution is a violent affair. When you have a violent affair, which is led by the grassroots people, the leaders are going to be the most violent and brutal people. That is natural. When you have a violent revolution, the people who rise to the top will be the most thuggish people, the most brutal people, the most power hungry people. That's one. Second, let's say you destroy the bourgeoisie and the capitalist system. Then you create a dictatorship of the proletariat. Did Marx ever say, how will this dictatorship of the proletariat be created? Will it be elected democratically? How will the leaders be selected? He never said a thing about that. Did he? I challenge you all. Look up Das Kapital. Look up, the Communist Manifesto. Whatever you want to look up. How is the dictatorship of the proletariat constructed? Who's going to be the leaders? Will they be elected democratically? Who's going to choose the leaders? He said nothing of the sort. So what happens is that the leaders choose themselves. How do they choose themselves? The most violent thugs who led the revolution will be the leaders. Those power hungry people, those super brutal people. That's what happens. And they end up creating a power center, a small power center, where all the power is concentrated, and then they decide what happens to the workers. And you will see this play out over and over and over again. And in countries like India or other countries, hypothetically, you will have communist parties that take advantage of democracy to play the game of electoral politics. And they will say, oh, we are all for the proletariat, and we are all for Marxism, and we are all comrades. But even those political parties will have something called a Politburo, which is going to be a small number of people who control everything, and they push all their cadres out on the streets to go and do violent things and face the ire of the police. Same toolkit over and over again. So if you actually study communism, then you will understand it's very different from what you're made to believe. But for that, you have to do reading. You have to actually read history. You have to read Das Kapital. You have to read the Communist Manifesto. You have to see the history in detail of places where the communist and Marxist experiment actually took place. Then you will understand this. Otherwise, if you just listen to what your teachers and professors say, you will be fooled, like millions of Indians are fooled. Please look it up. Please do your own due diligence. Please do your own study. Whatever little I told you just now, please fact check it from primary sources, not from your favorite influencer. Please, you have to do some hard work to learn things. Govind says, if you were a multimillionaire, say 100 crore net worth and 50 crore liquid, where would you live? Delhi or Mumbai? Why? It doesn't matter. If you have that sort of money, it doesn't matter where you live. You'll be fine. Do you understand that? If you have 50 crore liquid, you can choose to live wherever you want, and you're going to have exactly the lifestyle you want. Unless you go out on the streets, well, in that case, it's the same lifestyle for everybody, the same infrastructure. Doesn't matter. I like both Delhi and Mumbai. Delhi is a wonderful place. Mumbai also has its own great, wonderful strength and all that. So I don't know. Once I have that much 50 crore liquid, I'll let you know. Parth Sanes's question was for imports to India for better. What was the question? I don't remember now. What was the question? What did you ask? I'll have to look up all the. What GDP per capita India before low or no tariffs? Question was for imports to India for better products. GDP per capita. I still, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I think my intelligence levels are a little low for. Sometimes I don't understand questions. I'm so sorry. I still don't get it. I apologize. Parthji, sorry. Vidhi Maniyar says, how will India survive this coercion, especially long run? By ensuring that we have the right leadership. Okay? India will survive this coercion and not be a vassal only if we have the right leadership in the hot seat in New Delhi. If the Indian voters decide something funny, well, say goodbye to your sovereignty. That's how India will survive. All right? Good question. Good question. SRR, thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Prashant says impact of India suspending postal service to the US. So Indian Post, I believe, is suspending postal service to the US, except for items that cost less than $100 or something. It's going to impact Indian exports to the US. So I think it's a signal to the US that we don't care about your goddamn tariffs. We ourselves are going to reduce our exports to you. It's going to impact our MSMEs, medium and small medium, small MSMEs, the small industries and all that. It's going to impact them, which is going to cause them pain in the short term, and they will have to pivot very fast to exporting to other countries. Yeah. And Ankita is asking the same question. What's this suspension of postal services to the US thing? Is it only a symbolic posturing, perhaps? What's next? Is the situation going to worsen? Is India ready to absorb America's sanction blows? Well, like I said, I have not really looked into this in detail. What's just happened? I think I saw the news yesterday night or something. So, like I said, Indian Post will no longer send consignments to the US that have a value of more than $100. So only if you're sending some small gift or something to anybody in the US will you be able to use Indian Post. It means that you can still use other courier services. Okay, Indian Post, I think it's a government thing or something. I'm not sure, but whatever. So you can still use other courier services, which may be a little more expensive. So it's going to kind of impact Indian industries and MSMEs that are exporting goods and materials to the US. It's going to impact them. So maybe it's a signal to the US and also a signal to Indian industry, perhaps, that perhaps you should think of other markets. Is the situation going to worsen? I think it's going to worsen. Trump believes that he can make India bend. Trump believes that he can make India cave in. And India is not going to cave in. Mr. Modi is not going to cave in. So it's going to worsen. And Trump wants 0% tariffs from India on American imports, while he will keep the tariffs at maybe 19% or something. So that's the kind of unequal agreement he wants, and he wants India to be turned into a dumping ground for American products, and that is going to destroy India's economies. So India is not going to agree to this, which is why the situation is most likely going to worsen, and India will have to absorb the American pressure and the American coercion. Yeah, it's gonna be a tough time for India the next 20 years, and we are beginning to see that now. -2 cases. I live in the UK as an Indian. I faced a lot of racism, but now Indians are looked at with respect. Is it because of India's growing power and economy? It means that you've been living in the UK for more than 12 years, more than a decade. I'm pretty sure you're living in the UK for more than a decade, or at least a decade. So India was an insignificant country. From the Western perspective, India was insignificant. India was a third world country. It still is. But India did not matter in the world. India did not matter at all. But now India does matter. India is a major trading power. India is now a major economic power. India is a major military power. India is sending spacecraft to the moon and to Mars. India is testing ICBMs. India is doing very powerful rocket launches. India is making scientific advances, technological advances. India is the fourth largest economy. India matters geopolitically. Every single G7 meeting happens, they invite India. India really matters. That's happened only in the last 10 years. So India is now looked upon in outside the country in a different way. And even if people are unhappy with India's growth and India's rise, that unhappiness is also a form of respect. If you are insignificant, it is disrespect. But if people are upset with you, angry with you, at least they acknowledge that you matter, right? Which was not the case before. So when you say that you faced racism, I know exactly what you mean. You go outside the country, especially in Europe, you will face racism if you are not a white person. If you're Indian, yeah, you are looked upon with used to be looked upon with contempt in the past. The situation has changed, not in all countries, but in the major countries for sure. So it is definitely because of India's growing power and economy. Definitely because of that, and also because of India's leadership. Mr. Modi, well, he has transformed India's image in so many different ways. So all of that matters. Yeah. Solo Leveling says, in your opinion, how far behind is India compared to major world powers across economic, military, technological, and social dimensions? Economically, look, GDP per capita is 2,600, which is abysmal, which is like African countries, very far behind. Cumulative GDP is fourth in the world, soon to be third in the world. So, because even though we are all individually very poor on average, but cumulatively, because of our huge population, we really matter. So, we are very far behind when it comes to living standards, right? Standards of living. Economically, we could do much better. We're just a 4.9 or something trillion-dollar economy, which is small actually, even though we are fourth largest. 4.8, whatever the number is, 4.5, whatever you want to call it. We should be at least a $10 billion economy. So we have a long way to go. Military, well, we are a very powerful military actually. We are a powerful military. We are a nuclear power, and we have the means to deliver the nuclear weapons wherever we want. Uh, we have the world's best battle-tested air defense system, and our indigenous weapons manufacturing systems are pretty good, and we still have a lot of progress to make. But yeah, we are on decent good ground. We need jet engines and all that. Some lacunae still exist, but overall we are doing good progress. When it comes to AI, I don't know where we are. We seem to be far behind. Quantum computing, at least we have at least one quantum computing system now, and it's something that we can definitely work on further. Technological social dimensions. Technologically, look, social dimensions. Socially, when you say socially, I mean it's living standards. Living standards are abysmal in India. Infrastructure is abysmal. Okay, in those things we are like African countries, very poor, very poor state of affairs. A lot needs to be changed. A lot needs to be improved. Technologically, look, we are okay. Military, we're good. Economic, we're decent. Technologically, we are. So much, so much more improvement can be done. So yeah, that's what I would say. Yes. Okay, next. Sandeep Singh says, who and how India Bangladesh boundary demarcated? We helped them get independence from Pakistan, and still we got chicken neck problem. We hastily we took that area at 71. I don't know why we have the chicken neck problem. In 71, we could have solved it once and for all. Why did we, first of all, in 1947, why did we accept that? Why? What were our leaders doing? Were they even leaders of India? Or were they serving somebody else? To create this chicken neck issue there. Why? Who the hell were the British to decide the map? We should have told them to get the hell out, and we will decide the map. In 71 also we could have fixed the issue. Now we are where we are. We'll have to see eventually how to solve that problem. It is an issue for India. It's just 30 kilometers wide at a certain point, which is bad. Yeah. Pre-LTP says, opinion on online safety act government takeover UK. I haven't seen it. So I'm sorry. I don't know about that. I've heard some things, but I haven't looked into it in detail, so I can't really opine on that. Rahul Lakshmanan says, would you consider trolling the American immigration system by applying for a visa now? What's the point? Thank you for the suggestion. Aladdin Chavda, what's your take on acquiring a foreign citizenship? I think it's a personal choice. I would not dissuade somebody from doing that if that is what they want. It's entirely your choice. Entirely your choice. You have to decide what is best for you and what your ambitions are. If you feel that you will do better in life if you acquire a foreign citizenship, I will say go ahead and do it. It's entirely up to you. You are under no obligation to sacrifice your dreams and aspirations for any ideal or anything. So it's entirely up to you. I will not tell people what to do with their life. Rajat Chatterjee says, what role does Bangladesh play in future conflicts? How should India tackle it? Well, as long as Bangladesh behaves, we are fine. What role will Bangladesh play in a future conflict? I don't think Bangladesh will play any role in any future conflict. The moment, hypothetically, Bangladesh tries to get involved in a conflict, it will be trouble for Bangladesh. How should India tackle it? India should just very quietly communicate to Bangladesh, if required, that it is best for Bangladesh to stay out of any conflict involving India. Just stay out of it, and everything will go fine and smoothly. That's it. Saurabh Bharadwaj says, how did the USSR get a nuclear arsenal despite US victory? You mean 1991, right? Well, the US was in no position to take nuclear weapons from the USSR. Is that what you're talking about, 1991? Or are you talking about 1945? 1945 was a USSR victory. Okay. And they also had very high quality nuclear physicists and scientists, and that's why they were able to develop the nuclear bomb and eventually the thermonuclear bomb, the hydrogen bomb. And they acquired Nazi rocket scientists, which helped kickstart the USSR's uh, space program, which is also the ballistic missiles program, and that's how it went. Right? Okay, we're gonna end it very soon now. So, just a few more questions. What exactly is left and right ideology? What is the major thing that parties believe right now that depicts something to be left or right? If you want to talk about this in the context of India, left wing means, first of all, right wing means traditionalist people. I, right wing ideology is more conservative ideology. It is ideology that is rooted in Indian culture and civilization. That is called right wing in India. So if you are a Hindu, if you say I am a Hindu and I'm proud of being Hindu, it means you're a right winger. Even if you don't hate anybody else, even if you respect all religions, you'll still be considered to be a right winger. So I am considered to be a right winger because I am proud to be a Hindu. I am a Hindu and I'm proud to be that. I don't hate any other religion, but because I'm a Hindu and I'm proud to be one, I'm called a right winger. So in India, right wing ideology is portrayed as being Hindu in character. Even if it is very, even if the government's policies will be pretty left wing, but as long as they are proud of being Hindu, they will be portrayed as right wing. And in India, left wing means essentially you not very nationalistic. Okay. Pre LTP says World War One was for breaking European empires. World War Two was for Warrenburg banking war to spread central bank globally and bring fiat system. Agree. I have not read about the Warrenburg banking war. The central bank globally bring fiat system. No, I have not studied that part of the economic history, so I can't really say. Can't really say. Sorry. Sorry, sir. Bankunath Singh, this is a history question. We're discussing geopolitics today, sir. Please, sir, please, my dear viewers, when we have a session on one specific topic, let's stick to that. Because if I start taking other questions, I'm disrespecting my audience who has come here expecting a geopolitics session. So please, I apologize, but I can't take this question. Prathardana says, are we hiding our GDP? At 2010 dollar rupee exchange over rates, our GDP would be 8 trillion. Is this why the US wants to stop us? I don't know if we are hiding our GDP. Today, see, the 2010 dollar exchange rate is no longer relevant today. In 2010, what was the exchange rate? I'm not sure, maybe 50? I don't know what it was in 2010. Today, it is nearly 90. It's 85, 86, 87. I don't know what it is. So that obviously makes a huge difference if you are denominating all the GDP in US dollars. And because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, all GDP is essentially going to be denominated in US dollar terms. So are we hiding our GDP? I don't know. If we are hiding it, well, I'll say good. Is this why the US wants to stop us? Well, if we are actually hiding it and they're aware of it, maybe it's one of the reasons. But I'm not sure if we are hiding it. The way I see it is let's not assume things we can't see. What we can see is that our GDP is whatever, 4 point something trillion dollars, 4.5, 4.6, whatever it is. And we are on track to keep growing at a decent rate for the next 20 years. That will bring us into 10, 15 trillion dollar territory. And that's what the US is worried about. Because they've always worried about India becoming an imperialistic power. If you see their cables and communications, diplomatic communications, and think tank assessments from the 1950s and 60s, you will see that they were worried that India will go the way of Imperial Japan, which was very frightening for them. So they still have that worry because India has the potential, but Indians don't realize it. Rohit Sharma says, what's Mr. Chavda's favorite element from the periodic table? I've never thought about it. And anyway, this is geopolitics session, so I don't know. I don't have a favorite element from the, maybe some of the radioactive elements, perhaps. I don't know. AB says, what's your views on US deploying warships near Venezuela? I think it happened yesterday or something, right? The news came out. I really haven't looked into it yet. So I don't think I have any views right now before I first look into what exactly has happened, how many warships have been deployed, and in reaction to what has this happened, I'm not really sure right now because I've not looked into it. I think it's a very new development. So I apologize, I won't be able to answer this. Maybe in the next session I can give you a better answer. I haven't looked into it. It happened very recently. Morphin one says, how long before the US breaks our economy? Never, sir, never. They won't succeed. All right. Sushant Bharadwaj, thank you for your episode. Thank you for every episode. Thank you so much, all of you. I really, really appreciate all of you, all my dear viewers. You've been around, many of you, from the first episode, which happened what, in June or something, 2021, and it's been a while. I can't believe it's been so long. This is episode 180, 281. It's a pretty long string of episodes. It's been a pleasure. It's been a privilege to have all of you as viewers, to take all your questions. It's been a privilege that people ask me questions. So I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your viewership. It should be me who's thanking you. So thank you all. Thank you so much. Aradhya Pandit says, Ukraine attacked Russian nuclear base. What can be the consequences? Russian reaction. When did this happen? I'm not sure. I haven't seen this news. But Russia will respond. There will be a Russian response. And Ukraine will face consequences. Not very nice consequences. Guaranteed. Shubham Dubey says, when is India expected to prioritize the development of an indigenously built nuclear submarine? I think we are already doing that. We have, we operate a Chakra submarine, which is on lease from Russia. But we have our own nuclear submarine class, Arihant class submarines. Those are indigenously built nuclear submarines. And it's kind of slow development because the submarines take a long time to build. See, the French Safran class submarines, which are the latest, most advanced submarines that they have, nuclear submarines, they typically take about 10, 12 years to build one submarine. Okay? So it takes time. So we are prioritizing that. We have, I suppose, limited money for that, but we are doing that. We have miniaturized the nuclear reactor, and each subsequent submarine is going to be better than the previous one. And we are doing that. It's always be nice if we can prioritize it more and make it faster, hasten it, and maybe turn out more numbers. But it is what it is. So we are developing indigenously built nuclear submarines for sure. Okay, people, that is about it. We are at the end of today's live stream. We have gone well in excess of 2 hours. I thank you all for your questions. I really enjoyed this as always. And so today we're done for the day today. Thank you so much, everybody, for being on the live chat, for the questions, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next live stream. Please keep learning, please keep asking questions, please keep raising your standards, and I will see you in the next live stream. Thank you, take care, good night, good day, wherever you are. See you soon. Bye bye.